On April 4th, Anthropic tells users Claude subscriptions will no longer cover third-party tools like OpenClaw. No proper migration plan, no clean timeline, just a sudden policy shift that hit real developer workflows. Then in May, after the backlash, came the reversal. Or at least that's how it looked, because when you look closer, Anthropic did bring access back, but not the old economics. So this was not a reversal, it was a repricing. By the end of this video, you'll understand three things. What Anthropic actually changed, why the so-called reversal is not really a reversal, and what this means for your workflows after June 15th. Because if you're using Claude through agents, automation, CI pipelines, or third-party coding tools, the economics are changing. That is the real story. Anthropic didn't simply reverse the ban, it repriced the behavior. In February 2026, Anthropic reaffirmed restrictions around using Claude subscriptions with third-party harnesses and programmatic workflows. But this was not communicated like a major product change. For most developers, it was not something they experienced immediately. Then in April, things became more visible. Anthropic appeared to test removing Claude code from the Pro plan for a small percentage of new prosumer signups. But because public-facing pages and documentation also changed, the test looked much broader from the outside. Developers had paid for a subscription, they expected access, and suddenly the product boundaries looked unclear. Anthropic's explanation was simple. Usage had changed, demand was high, and current plans were not built for these patterns. And look, maybe that was true. These models are expensive to run. Demand is real. Compute is not unlimited. But for developers who had already built workflows around Claude, the real question was not whether demand was high. The real question was, why is the product changing without a clear explanation? Then came the April enforcement. Claude subscriptions would no longer cover third-party tools like OpenClaw. Those tools had to use extra usage bundles or API keys instead. And then, in May, Anthropic changed course again. It brought programmatic usage back under paid Claude plans, but with a catch. Starting June 15th, that usage would draw from a separate agent SDK credit pool. At first glance, that looked like a reversal, but when you look closely, it was not a clean reversal. It was something else. It was a repricing. But the real question is not just why Anthropic restricted this. The deeper question is, why were production-style workflows running through a consumer subscription in the first place? And the answer is simple. Because the product made it feel possible, the pricing was predictable, the model was powerful, the tooling kept improving, and once developers found they could connect Claude to agents, terminals, GitHub workflows, and background jobs, they naturally started building on top of it. They turn it into workflows, automations, and eventually they start treating it like infrastructure. And that is where Anthropic's subscription model started to break. Because Claude subscriptions were designed mainly for interactive usage. Example, a person chatting with Claude, or writing documents, or asking coding questions. But agentic workflows behave differently. They can run again and again. They can read large code bases. They can make repeated tool calls. They can operate in the background without a human typing every prompt. It was an infrastructure-grade workload sitting on consumer-style pricing. And that brings us to the number that explains the whole story. Claude Sonnet API pricing is around $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. Now compare that to Claude Pro at around $20 a month. A coding agent reading through a large code base. Background agents summarizing issues, writing reports, and handling repeated tasks throughout the day. That kind of usage can burn through millions of tokens very quickly. Not necessarily in a month, sometimes in a single day. That is the gap. Consumer pricing on one side, infrastructure-grade compute on the other. For a while, developers were building inside that gap, and Anthropic allowed that ecosystem to grow. Tools integrated with Claude. Users built habits. Teams created workflows. Some people started depending on subscription-based Claude access as if it were a stable infrastructure layer. But at some point, the math had to matter. Policy can define what is allowed. Terms of service can restrict behavior. But if one type of customer is consuming far more compute than the subscription was designed to support, Policy alone cannot fix it, only pricing can fix that. If you like this kind of breakdown, subscribe to our channel. I cover the decisions behind AI headlines, not just the headlines. Back to what the June 15th fix actually costs. Starting June 15th, Claude subscription usage splits into two buckets. The first bucket is normal interactive usage, chatting with Claude, using the web interface, using Claude Code directly. That stays under your subscription limits. The second bucket is Agent SDK credits. This applies to programmatic workflows, automated agents, third-party tools, Claude Code GitHub actions, and background usage that behaves more like infrastructure than normal human interaction. So, if your workflow is not just you chatting with Claude, but software calling Claude repeatedly in the background, that usage moves into a different economic model. Pro users get a smaller monthly credit allocation. Max users get larger credit allocations. But once those credits run out, API-style pricing kicks in. So yes, access came back, but the old economics did not. The ban was softened, but the usage moved into a metered credit system. And from Anthropic's side, the logic is understandable. They were subsidizing infrastructure-grade compute at consumer subscription prices. That was never going to hold forever. But the problem is not only the final decision. The problem is the path they took to get there. Quiet legal language, then user confusion, then tool restrictions, then public backlash, then a reversal with a separate credit pool. That kind of rollout creates distrust, even when the underlying business reason makes sense. So let's call this what it is. Anthropic did not just reverse a policy problem, it fixed a pricing problem. The 24-hour reversal was not simply a concession to developers, it was the start of a new billing model. And that distinction matters. Because Anthropic has built its brand around safety, trust, and being more careful than everyone else. But when developers are building real workflows on your platform, trust is not only about model behavior, it is also about product communication. Multiple rule changes in roughly 90 days without clear developer-facing communication is not just a policy issue, it becomes a trust issue. Metered billing for agentic AI was always coming. Anthropic just took a messy path to get there. So if you're using Claude for automation, don't wait for June 15th. Check your token usage now. Separate normal interactive usage from background agent usage. Look at how often your workflows run. Look at how many files they read. Look at how much output they generate. And if your workflow runs often, compare your expected usage against the new credit pool. Because the worst time to understand metered pricing is after the first unexpected bill. Here's my take. The underlying economics are defensible. You cannot run infrastructure on consumer pricing indefinitely. But the way Anthropic handled the path here created a trust problem. June 15th is the real test, not the ban, not the reversal. June 15th is when developers will find out whether their Claude-based workflows still make financial sense. So my question for you is simple. If you have built on Claude, does this change your stack? Are you staying with Claude subscriptions, moving to direct API access, or looking at OpenAI, Gemini, or local models instead? Drop your take below. If you want more such evidence-based breakdowns of what is actually happening in the AI world, subscribe to Sunny on AI and don't forget to like this video. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care.